Thank you, and welcome back to the Patriots 300 Level Podcast. My name is Eric, and I'm joined by my co-host Kevin. Welcome back for our 64th episode this week, where we'll be recapping a Patriots win against the Buffalo Bills, again assessing where the team is likely headed going forward and a potential path towards the playoffs, and previewing their game this upcoming Sunday versus the Miami Dolphins. As a reminder, you can follow us on Twitter/X and Instagram at Pats300levelpod. Pats300levelpod for up-to-the-minute updates and commentary on news of the day, as well as at our website at pats300levelpod.com. Kevin, surprising, we haven't had a lot of these in the past year or so, but recapping a Patriots win. I know we both predicted the Patriots to lose to Buffalo in our last episode. However, day of game, we were texting each other, and we actually both had a change of heart where we thought they were going to win. Just a inert feeling that something was going to happen, and then they did. They shocked most of the world, especially a lot of Patriots fans. But really good win against a good Buffalo team, even though they have been struggling a little bit, winning 29-25. What were your initial thoughts?
Yeah, I think I was going to mention too how the day of the game, both of us actually saying we actually thought they were going to be able to pull this one out. Really, the reason going into that was one, just the amount of injuries the Bills have on their offensive line, the defensive line, defense in general, really. And then I think the biggest thing, and we didn't really talk about the ceremonies that were coming up, and maybe we can hit into it a little bit later, or even throughout this, was just watching the Hall of Fame ceremony, where watching Bill talk and just how at ease he was. It brought this calming sense over me, where I was like, just something there. You know how in the Do Your Job documentary, when Bill says there's just something that didn't look right over there, and that big quote. Just watch him. Something I was like, there's a reason why he's this calm and this at ease. Either one, he knows he's fucking canned, like he's just and he's just playing out the string. He doesn't give a shit anymore. Or two, has a really good feeling going into tomorrow that they're going to actually compete well and do really well. And I think we've mentioned this before. I think we maybe kind of over exaggerated our last episode just by how down we were, but they've left breadcrumbs kind of there throughout the season that they have the ability to do this. They just haven't been able to string it together for a full game. And the way that the team is really made up of, which is still a shortcoming of them, is that they have to do a full complimentary game, the full 60 minutes, to actually have a chance to win every game. And they have a chance to win every game. It's just when they shoot themselves in the foot, they don't have the talent and the ability to really overcome many mistakes. So they have to play really good, clean football. And that's what we saw for the most part, except the Bourne fumble near the end, which almost fucked them. But it was a really nice win to see. I think it also kind of shows that the Bills, just after watching them even this whole year, they have some holes that we're definitely seeing, but the Patriots attacked it really well there. They're able to cover Diggs and cover him well, and J.C. Jackson played really well in this game, besides that missed tackle near the end, which also almost screwed them. But I think they really knew how to attack them. And I think we've been seeing this, and I think we mentioned this last game too, or you mentioned this, where they've slowly, progressively gotten a little bit better against guarding Josh Allen and knowing how to kind of defend him. Where we saw, I think the best time they ever had that really with him recently was that last game where they threw really the kitchen sink at him in the last week of the season, and threw everything. They were doing zone, they were doing man, they were doing blitzing, they were just doing every sort of thing to try and confuse him. And you could say it worked, because they should have won that game if it wasn't for the return touchdowns. And they kind of did,
or
the
at
same
least
thing.
had a shot. We don't know. They could have scored a field goal or a touchdown on those two return drives.
Yeah, so we don't
but
really
they were
know
at least would have had a shot. But I think part of the thing too is the last regular season game and then the playoff game in 21, and even last year, but especially those games, they were without some key defensive backs. They were starting practice squad guys as starting cornerbacks in the playoff game. They were without Jalen Mills. I believe they were without Jonathan Jones. and they just weren't set up defensively to defend them well.
Mhm.
And the Patriots defense has gotten progressively better. They've added much more depth, even without Christian Gonzalez, even without Marcus Jones. They still have the pieces in the secondary, especially, but even their depth on the defensive line
Mhm.
to attack the Bills' offense. And that's something that going into the season, I know when we were doing our roster preview, I was like, I don't know who they're going to keep in the defensive backs and the defensive line, just
Mhm.
because they have so many quality depth players, not just good starters, but
Mhm.
good depth throughout. And this year, so far, it's actually helping that they've had all those pieces because you've had key injuries at those positions,
Mhm.
being without 3 or 4 of your top cornerbacks. Granted, they had some of them back this week, and they also traded for J.C. Jackson. And then being without Josh Uche, being without Matthew Judon, being without Keon White, and they were still able to still get after the quarterback.
Mhm.
That just shows to how Bill has built this defense and the quality players they have all around.
Yep.
That
It'd
they
just be
can
nice
with
if offense had a little bit of
Yeah, no, I agree. But
that.
you could say this is a
Mhm.
championship defense,
Mhm.
and I know some people are saying, and
Mhm.
rightfully so, that they're questioning some of Bill's
Mhm.
decisions, especially when looking at the offensive end. But the defense is put so well together. If you just had someone that was at least better evaluating talent on the offensive side, Bill still knows how to put the defense together, and in the playoffs, defense is what wins championships.
Yep. I think another big thing that you were mentioning about just the depth there was just Anthony Jennings was kind of showing what we thought he was going to look like last year. I think
What I
did I,
thought he was going to look like last year.
didn't I have him as
No, I was the
the
one
come?
that said he was going to be the surprise most improved, and
Okay.
then you didn't think he was going to make the roster, and then in the preseason he looked really good, and then during the regular season he just
Oh,
didn't
I
quite.
thought at the right before the season started because of the preseason, I thought I had him as the comeback player of the year or that sort of
Yeah,
thing, because he showed a lot in preseason,
yeah,
and I think he's really kind of building upon that. And it takes some guys a little bit of time, and then sometimes some people are just gamers where they have to really be thrown out there and they'll show what they are. Like Jimmy Garoppolo was a bad
yeah.
practice player here, but turned it on a game usually, except when Josh McDaniels is the head coach. All right, so offense. I think the biggest key of the game, I would say, was the offensive line, where they finally actually had their pretty much all their starters back, except for really Riley Reef, but
And they
and
did
they
something
made
that we've been calling for over a year and a half, is moving Michael Onwenu
mhm,
to right tackle, and then they have, I guess, I don't even know if it's decent interior, but you
mhm,
have some unknowns at interior. But if you at least have a strong outside and then you have a strong center,
mhm.
you can kind of work within it. And
Yeah.
then having Cole Strange back this week too.
Yep. Yeah, I think having Cole Strange back helped a bunch just because Mafi, I think, is a little over his head right now. I still think he might be a good player just based on his size and his strength. I think he's just not fully ready yet.
He's a big boy.
Oh yeah. And then it's so looked a lot better switching the guard. He may
Yeah,
just be a guard.
yeah.
Or maybe he might need a year or two to really learn the offensive line, then move to tackle again. But like we said, we've been calling for Onwenu to be the offensive tackle spot for quite a while. I know a lot of people think that you really only need one good offensive tackle, and then you can really scheme around the other one. They clearly couldn't do that with Lowe because Lowe was so bad, or really anyone they put there. Calvin Anderson, even so, wasn't great when he was there,
And,
and they
and,
don't
and
have a tight end.
to their not really to their credit, but they
Hmm.
shouldn't really, those players shouldn't be in those positions where
Hmm.
they're starting right tackles.
Yeah.
If you have an injury during a game and
Hmm.
they come in, that's one thing, but they
Hmm.
shouldn't be who's projected to be your starting offensive tackle.
Yeah.
So they're not being put in positions to
Hmm.
succeed as it is.
Yeah, and then the reason why too, some people say you can have a weaker one side on the offensive tackles because you could scheme it up. But the problem with scheming it up is they don't have a tight end that can actually block except for Farrell Brown. And if you put him out there, he's gonna be a wasted player most of the time. So they don't
Eh,
Henry's not
in fact, Farrell Brown is on pace
no,
to
no,
set
I
the record
mean
for most yards
no,
per
no, I mean
reception in
as
Patriot
just like
history.
if they're putting him into just the block,
Yeah.
it's wasting it. So right now they're using him in a good position for blocking and catching. But if you're using him primarily to block and chip and not actually have any sort of pass play, it puts them in a bad situation.
Yeah, agreed.
Whereas you don't know what like you know that you're going to have to leave him in because Lowe sucks so much. So by having someone that you can actually rely on, it helps kind of open up things that you can do, which you might not be able to do with that. So again, offensive line looks so much better. And the biggest thing, we've been saying this for what, 2 years now,
And even
where
dating back to Brady's 2019,
yeah.
granted we didn't have the pod, but when we were
Mhm.
talking about people saying Brady washed up,
Mm-hmm. And just
the
look at
entire
the offensive line and what the
yeah,
difference it makes. I mean, how much better Mac looked when he actually has time to throw, when he has time to step up, when he's not worrying that every single time he steps back that the pass rush is going to be there in a second or two. And we saw what that looked like, and I think he could build upon that, knowing that is if assuming this line stays healthy, he's only going to be more confident. So it takes a little bit of time once you're
yeah.
broken kind of down. So um,
And
that's
then
why.
also with an offensive line being healthy and playing well like they did on Sunday,
Mhm,
that also opens up the running attack. And then it also allows the receivers time to get separation
mhm,
and to get open. The wide
mhm.
receivers, as we know, outside of Bourne and Douglas, they're not really shifty. They don't really get good separation.
Mhm,
So if Mac only has a second or two to throw, they're likely not going to be open. But if
mhm,
Mac has more time to throw, they have time to get open to get into
mhm.
their routes.
Yep. I think the next biggest thing, really outside the line, would have been the two receivers like we mentioned, Bourne and Douglas. I think they had it was one of it was just need because Juju was hurt. They couldn't force him out there. Um, but Douglas and Bourne, like we've said also all along really this whole season, they're your two best playmakers that you have, besides Stevenson and Elliott. But for wide receivers, they're your two best options that you have, and you have to get them involved, especially with Douglas. I know he's a rookie; he's going to make some mistakes. He had that one mistake where Mack ended up throwing the ball um, away because he was in the wrong spot. But that's really what you need, and that's how they're going to only continue to get better because they're the ones that can get the yak. They're the ones that can um, really be the playmakers that you need. And again, we know that Douglas and Bourne, they're going to make a few mistakes a game, and you're going to have to live with it because the the benefits outweigh the risks dramatically. Because we know that honestly, I think Parker sucks. I think he's a bitch. I think he isn't he's soft.
Yeah.
And then I think that Juju, I think he's just gonna need time. I think that's the biggest thing where we've seen it with some wide receivers that come here. It takes them a little bit of time to get in here. Um, so I think he's gonna need hopefully he'll be better towards the end of the year and the next year we'll see something on him. Or he could be like the other wide receivers they bring in here that do nothing.
Yeah.
So it could be one of those two things. I'm more hopeful he'll be like the Amendola route, but we'll have to see. I've been talking a ton, so let's get your kind of take here. Anything else you like to talk about? Anything you want to add on for what I've said so far?
No, I think like we said, this is something that I mentioned a few weeks ago, and I've been saying for a few weeks. For the Patriots offense to get back on track, you have to look at what has been successful for them and what worked for them. And what really worked for them, at least offensively, was in the Eagles game. They were doing the quick three-step drop and out, quick passing game, quick slants and cuts, screens to give Mac enough time to not have to worry about needing time to throw a deep ball. So by doing those quick passes, it slows up the pass rush and again gives more break on the offensive line and gives Mac a better chance. And we saw that against the Eagles where Mac threw for 300 something yards, looked really well. And they went back to that this week. And that's in part is what contributed to the offense having success. The offensive line playing well definitely did too, but that type of scheme is what how this offense is really going to work, especially considering the playmakers around them in offense. So it was good to see them go back to that. And then another thing is something that I mentioned last week is just how we've been pretty disappointed in Mike Gesicki, how they utilize him, his production. And something that I was calling for is at least in the red zone, using him. He's 6'6" slot receiver where it's just a mismatch. There's no defensive backs that can win a jump ball against him. And then the first throw to Pop Douglas that Douglas was open, but considering the offensive line or the defenders around him, Mac had to throw a high ball that only Douglas could get, and Douglas wasn't tall enough to really get it, being at 5'8". And then the next play, they ran the exact same route, but with Mike Gesicki, and they got the touchdown. And that's something that we need to see is more utilization of Gesicki in the red zone. Even Hunter Henry too. Henry had, I think, 9 touchdowns in 2021, all in the red zone. Utilize your big guys for mismatches, and then you can also still have people like Bourne or Douglas in the red zone that their shiftiness can get them open, sort of like Edelman in the Super Bowl against the Seahawks. So those are some ways to try and have them have some success, especially in the passing game, to get touchdowns instead of having to resort to field goals. But again, I liked what I saw from the offense.
All right. Anything else you want to talk about, or before we move to defense?
No, that was pretty much it.
All right. So defense, like we said, they played really well against the Bills. And really the last kind of the last touchdown that they gave up to Bills was more on Borden's mistake of the fumble, really, than anything. They only had 30-ish yards to go.
Yeah.
And any defense that puts them in a tough spot, and especially going up against the Bills and Josh Allen. I think the biggest really key highlights here was one. I think the biggest one was just the pressure they were getting on Josh Allen with the interior pressure,
Yeah.
like we mentioned earlier.
Yeah, this is something we mentioned last week too. Of
Mhm.
the keys to beat the Bills is get that interior pressure
Mhm.
and disrupt the pocket,
Yep.
and that's
And
something they were
then
able to do, especially with Barmore the way he's been playing
mhm.
this year.
Yep. And then the other thing is too that they were getting the pressure up the middle. So when he tried to roll out to either side, they really had someone there covering for him.
Yeah,
So they really schemed this up really well, and it seems like maybe the Patriots kind of have an understanding of how to really fight them now, and they actually have the players to actually do it.
yeah,
Is the big thing. I think another really just key highlight here is his Peppers. Every single game now, he's been having a huge impact.
yeah.
And again, first play of the game for the Bills has the interception. He rolls off of his coverage and because he sees what's going to happen and ends up intercepting the ball. So it was a really good play by him.
Uh,
Really good
uh,
awareness.
yeah, great play. And even in the post game, this is something that Bill and even Peppers said is that they saw this on tape and they saw the Bills attack them last year with those same type of plays. So they practiced it this week, practiced against it. And then Peppers having this practice and just his instinctual awareness to not only come off of his man, but wait enough to bait Josh Allen to throw to him.
Yeah. It was really well there. And again, the corners well played a pretty good game for the most part, except for the ending, where there was the failed tackle by Jackson and Miles Bryant on Diggs. And then, but overall, I thought they played really well. They
Yeah.
limited Diggs to under 100 yards.
I think it was under
Um,
50 yards. Let me just
I think it was 60-ish, but I can't remember the actual number. I didn't write it down. But again, they handled them pretty well. They got constant pressure, and I think they did a pretty good job overall. So, really happy with this
They
team.
held
And
Diggs to 6 catches for 58 yards.
all right, so you're right under 60. Um, and again, July Tavai had another good game as well.
Yeah.
He's pretty much everywhere. And honestly, I think they actually would have even held them to less points if it wasn't for the two really
Roughing the
bogus
passers.
roughing the passer calls. One where Allen was throwing his head back when he was hit right in the chest, and the other one was when Barmore was tackling him as he was throwing it, and there was nothing he could do to try and shift his weight off. It was impossible. He was already in the act of falling on him, and it's not like he's a small guy. He's 320 pounds. He's not going to be able to shift his weight that quick, and
Yeah.
there's nothing for him to do. So, and we've seen this throughout the league. Especially this whole week, the officiating has been horrendous. It's been
Yeah.
awful, and it seems to be getting worse and worse.
Yeah.
And
It
even
could
the
have even it could have been even worse on the Mondre
NFL,
first down on that last drive where
yeah,
they initially threw the flag for an eligible man downfield, which wasn't. And
hmm
luckily, to our surprise of anyone that's been watching the past few weeks, they correctly
hmm
picked it up. But that's
yeah,
what fucked them last week versus the Raiders, where Zeke had that 75-yard touchdown, but they called holding
hmm
on Hunter Henry, which wasn't holding. It's just
hmm
the refs have been having too much of an impact. In just the last few
hmm
years, especially, it's just been
and yeah, and
ridiculous. But
especially this year, it seems even worse, and they've been
yeah,
throwing flag happy. And even Jim Irsay tonight tweeted out that the NFL admitted that they got the call wrong against the Colts in the Colts Browns game, and that would have ended up changing the game, and the Colts would have won that game.
Yeah.
So what can you do to actually hold these people accountable? And the other thing that's also concerning is just with how much they're ingrained with betting. Is any of this is everything on the up and up? Is there anything you have to worry about? Is there a Tim Donaghy situation ever coming? I'm not
Yeah.
saying it's happening this time. I think it's more just incompetence than anything, just because you
Yeah.
see a lot of the good refs, they end up getting taken by the networks, or
Yeah.
they retire early, or they don't do as much just because they're not full salary refs and they're having other jobs. They just have to do something to change it, because right now it's not working. It's getting worse. And they're starting to have a pretty big impact on
Yeah.
the way that games are being played and completed. All right, 3 up, 3 down. Do you want me to go first?
You can
And
go first.
list yours? All
Or
right. So,
I can go first, and then you can go first for the 3 down.
all right.
I think ours are similar for 3 up. First up is Mac, where he was just by far the best game of his career. Statistically, it was up there. I don't know. You might argue it is best or not statistically, but compared to where he's been the past few weeks, him going 25 for 30 against a Buffalo team that even without 4 starters is still a good defense. And the way the offensive line has been playing, he was just absolutely excellent. Uh, had some really key throws. I think he had only 1 incompletion the entire fourth quarter. Had an absolute dime on 3rd and 8 to get a first down, which if they didn't convert would have been about a 56, 57-yard field goal attempt for Chad Ryland to tie the game. So he was excellent, and just everything you can ask for in a quarterback, he was able to deliver, and starting to show people why maybe they shouldn't have tanked for Caleb or Drake May, where they might still have their guy in Mac. Number 2, I'd have to go with Barmore. He was just everywhere. Again, just being absolutely disruptive up the middle, and was a key reason for why this defense was able to have success. Number 3 is just the offensive line overall, where they had, I think, 3 straight games of almost 40+% pressures to only having about 20% pressure. Again, against a defensive pass rush, even without their 2 defensive tackles, is still one of the best pass rushers in football. And then just honorable mention, I have to go again with Peppers, where he's been everything you can ask for. I'd say their best player overall this entire year.
Right. Yeah, very similar. So I got Mac, Douglas again. He was the best playmaker on the team in the game, and then Barmore. So I think we really discussed it. So not really much more to add there. And again, just Barmore this whole year has been building off of what he was doing towards the end of last year, and he's really showing to be that 3 down player that they're looking for him. 3 down, I've got Duggar, Bourne's fumble. So I think Bourne would have actually been in the up if it weren't for that, and I'm just putting that one play. And Vernon Lowe, I think that's his first name, right? Vernon. And
I don't think so.
no, I don't know. Oh, I'm thinking it's Vern. I'm terrible with first names. So again, Duggar. He just hasn't. Vidarian. I knew it was something with a V. That's how little I think of him. So Kyle Duggar. This whole year, we've talked a little bit here. More me, really through text with Eric. When we go saying who are they gonna, if they're gonna resign one. And we talked about this last episode. We think Peppers is really the long-term situation at safety rather than Duggar, because realistically, you probably only going to be able to keep one long term. And again, this game, he ended up missing a tackle on a huge play that ended up converting for first down.
It was 3rd and 15.
Yep. And he just makes those 1 to 3 mistakes a game that are just crucial, where it ends up hurting them a lot, and it keeps them out of that top tier safety group that I would say. I think he's a good player. He just hasn't shown that he's going to be that great elite safety that we were all hoping it was going to be. I don't think he's really taken as much of a step forward as we thought he would, just because he started off really well. He's
And
gotten
even
better
last
in
year,
cover.
he showed flashes where you thought
Mm,
he could build upon it, but we
yeah,
just haven't seen it this year,
yeah.
where we've seen more lapses and not as much flashes. So
Mm-hmm.
the consistency just hasn't been there.
Yeah. Bourne's fumble. Again, unacceptable in that situation. I know it's a bang bang play, not really anything he really did with how he was placing the ball. It was just a really good play by the defense, but you can't have that happen there. And he had a funny comment on I think it was Gasecki's post
Yeah.
on Instagram when he said, "You saved my career," because he knows that if they ended up losing this game, he might not be be playing the rest of the year. And then Lowe, he didn't play
The
much.
one thing with Bourne too that kind of worries me is he's only had three. I had to look it up. He's only had three fumbles with the Patriots in
Mm-hmm.
his time with them, but all three of them were in key situations in the fourth quarter,
Mm-hmm.
which isn't really great. Four. He had two last year, one in 2021.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it might just be just going back to the part of the reason why he didn't play as much last year is they didn't trust him
Mm-hmm.
to run the right route or everything. But again, especially with him being their best receiver, he needs to hold on to that ball.
Yep. And then Lowe, he didn't play much, but when he did, he was terrible. And he ended up the first play he was in there had a costly penalty. So he stinks. He needs to stay off the field, and everyone needs to stay healthy so he can stay as far away as from the offensive line as possible because he's awful. He to quote a in I don't know how do I describe him. Uh uh an awful listening show. He sucks, he blows, he's terrible. All right, your turn.
I Nothing really much to add. I had the same three down too. There wasn't really much negatives from this game,
Mm-hmm.
especially with a win being 8.5 point underdog. So Duggar was number one, Bourne's fumble or just Bourne in general, even though he was great, except for that one play. That one play
Mm-hmm.
could have cost them.
Yep.
And then Low.
All right. So where are the Pats heading? Right before we get to that, there is one bit of thing I wanted to mention just briefly was just that report that came out from Ian Rappaport on Saturday. I think
Sunday
it
morning,
was Sunday morning.
right
Where
before the game.
saying okay, because I knew it was in the morning because I was out shopping. I couldn't remember what day. We're saying that Belichick had signed a lucrative multi-year deal to remain with the Patriots for several more years, and something that we always kind of saw right afterwards was the local media, especially Tommy Curran, Phil Perry, the people that did not get the scoop,
Greg Bedard.
um, all kind of pissed off and trying to make their assumptions of what the deal actually is because they have no idea what it is because the only ones that really know it are the Crafts and Bill, and then Bill's in a circle. And maybe even Linda might know it at the time because they may still been on. They were on and off when it happened, so maybe she knows too. But so yeah, they're trying to do their guessing. You could tell that they were kind of hurt over the fact that they know this happened. So all trying to put their spin on it, put their guesses. Tom Curran saying, "Oh, he can't see how it would be more than into next year," which doesn't make any sense because if you're saying that, that means that he would have been going into this season on his last year of the deal, which doesn't make any sense at all.
Why would you only sign a 1 year contract
Yeah,
extension? Or he went into this upcoming season without a contract
yeah.
and then they
So
signed him.
yeah, it doesn't make any sense, and you could tell just by the reporting, and you see it, and we mentioned this before. I think I tweeted up before where um people that actually have some of the know, where like Kirk Minahan, by example, he's actually good friends with Jonathan Kraft, and he said explicitly on our show before, he knew for a fact that they weren't firing Bill.
He didn't
Um,
say it on our show. He said
no,
it
no, no,
and we
show
said
on
it
his
on our
show,
show.
yeah.
Uh,
So on his show, and then I tweeted that out. So it seemed like he actually had more of an understanding of what actually was going on rather than the people around there. Now, still, that doesn't stop them from getting rid of him. They could just eat the money, but it does put a little bit more of the fact that I think a lot of the things that we've said before, where um, Robert, I don't is really cares about legacy, and he's getting up there in age. I don't think he wants to be known as the guy that got rid of both Tom and Bill. So
yeah.
he says he's very vocal about things, and we've seen even with Deflate and that sort of things. He's really good at like the Ron Pompous stuff. It's not acceptable for that sort of thing. But at the end of the day, he is a little bit more lenient on different things, and I really just think it'd be really really hard for him more especially than Jonathan, um, to get rid of both Bill and Tom.
Yeah.
I don't think that he would try and have that happen if it was just Jonathan. I think Jonathan's more
I think
analytical,
Jonathan doesn't have the same
sentimental.
sentiment. But one thing you also have to remember is a big reason why Bill Belichick is the Patriots head coach is because of Jonathan
Mhm,
Kraft, not Bob. Jonathan's the one that told Robert to sign him as the head
mhm,
coach back from when Bill was on the Patriots defensive staff in 1996.
yeah.
And then the other thing too is just we saw people complaining, or even before this report came out, we saw
Mhm,
people like Burt Breer saying, "Oh, the Patriots have been having conversations of getting rid of Bill, and they started before the season even started."
mhm,
And then the report came out saying that he was signed before the season started, which
mhm,
just shows that Breer's full of shit.
mhm,
And you have to see how he actually reports things. If he says "I think" or "after talking to people I believe," it's
mhm.
all his opinion, and he has no idea.
Yep.
And then we saw Tom Curran, like you said, saying that I'd be shocked, I'd be amazed if it's beyond 2024. And then the next day, Rappaport saying that the contract was for several years. So I think part of it is Robert does want to see Bill get shoeless record, and Bill wants that too.
Mhm,
And several more years, 2025, realistically, if the Patriots go 8 to 9 wins, he should get it by 2025. And then also, like you were saying, is he saw Tom Brady leave and win a Super Bowl the next year. I don't think he wants to, like you said, be the one to let Bill go too. But if Bill was to go to the Cowboys or the Chargers,
mhm.
I think he could easily win a Super Bowl in the next couple of years, the way those rosters are built and how they're pretty much both just a head coach away.
Mhm.
And if he was to let both of them go and see both of them win a Super Bowl, it would look very badly on him too. So
Yep.
I think he knows Bill, the success Bill has built here, and he has the loyalty and wants to give him the benefit of the doubt.
Yep. And I think another big thing that really kind of opened my eyes a little bit more was just listening to the Hall of Fame ceremony for both Scar and Vrabel and even Bill, where I think this is another thing which made me think a little bit more was just even some of the offensive talent issues that we've seen is that we've seen a lot of offensive assistants leave the team over the last 5 years or so.
Yeah,
And one of the big things that he credits Scar with was working out the players for the draft and for free agency and being able to trust on their evaluations. They can't really do that. They haven't been able to really do that as much. We're having the same consistent offensive coaches doing the same job of actually doing that work. So they haven't had the same offensive line coach year over year, really. They haven't had the same OC year over year.
quarterback
Um,
coach,
Quarterback coach, wide
wide
receivers coach. They've
receivers,
had a
tight
lot
end
of
coach.
movement with pretty much all those coaches. So one thing that may actually end up helping is I don't think Bill O'Brien was coming here for just 1 year. I feel like he would have given his word that he'd be the same thing that he did with Saban, where he said that he promised them for 2 full years he would fulfill his contract. I think the same thing probably would have happened here. I also don't think that because of his situation with his family, and his son having special needs, I don't think he likes to uproot them that often. Just because they like it here, first of all, because one, the hospital system, his wife's family is here. He went to Brown. It's very local and very good for their whole family situation and having family to help support them. So I think that's one plus, and I think that it's comfortable here for him. And I think it's difficult for him to move year to year. So I think he is going to be here for another, hopefully, a couple of years. So I
Yeah,
think that may end up helping their improvement overall. I think the other big kind of thing that we did here, from really, it was more really eye opening from Vrabel, because I really respect him as a coach. And I think he's really well. Is when he made the comment about how when he was talking about the teams in the past, where what they had and how everyone would put the team first, and everyone they believed in themselves, and just the way he was talking about Bill and the team overall. And he said that that's what he's trying to instill over in Tennessee. And he's like, I don't, this is an exact quote, but he was like, and we may never even, I meant it, may never even see it ever again.
Yeah, he
But
said,
that's what
"Don't
I'm
take
trying.
it for granted.
Yeah.
It's not as easy as it looks."
So I think just, and he did mention that he took those years for granted, and a lot of people did. So just the fact that some of that reminiscing and some of how hard it is to have a successful team, and I think that's something that he really kind of exposed and saying that it's not easy to do, and the fact that they were able to do it, and it wasn't just Tom, it was the whole team. I think that's another thing that even maybe Robert might have heard too, and maybe put some perspective in, because he did spend time with Scar and Vrabel this whole weekend because they were here the whole time. So I think that also might have helped him too, just kind of understand what's going on and how hard it is. Because we both like Vrabel. I think he's
Yeah.
an excellent head coach. He's
Yep.
probably the top five right now, I would say.
I'd say top three.
Um,
Granted, I don't
and,
have I'm not the biggest fan of some of the head coaches that some
mhm,
people like, but I think Vrabel, Bill are two of the top 3 to 5 coaches. I'd even put Flores there, even though Flores isn't a head
yeah.
coach, but the turnaround Minnesota has done the past few weeks too. But that's
Mhm.
besides the point.
But yeah, I think that's I think that really helped show a lot, and I think it was a really good thing. Everyone should give a chance. Should go out on Patriots.com or the Patriots app. They can watch not only the highlights now, but they also have the full ceremony up, which I need to get a chance to look. I was just watching different clips and jumping around. And then Matt Light had a really good story of Scarnecchia, where he was telling Scar that he's got narcolepsy and he will fall asleep even while driving, or like if he's not engaged in a meeting. And then Scar said, you'd be better off falling asleep in your car while driving than falling asleep in my meeting room because I'll kill you. So I thought that was a really funny one by Scar.
Yeah.
So, all right, moving on. And I think the next thing I wanted to head and talk about was just where the Patriots heading for the rest of the year. We talked about last week, and it's really going to be a topic pretty much, I would say, the next few weeks, especially with the trade deadline coming up on Halloween. Very, very good day that day. So right now they're 2-5. And we really talked about this last week. We both really said there were 3 different ways they could go about it. So either one, they would completely blow, end up finishing like 3 and whatever. Option 2, they'd be middling. Or option 3 is they'd go on some sort of run and contend for the playoffs.
And among those, I think neither of us believe they'll be the one where they'll just completely collapse is the wrong word when you're
Mhm.
already starting 1-5, but you'll just completely
Give
tank
up, really.
and
Yeah.
give up, go 3 and
Hmm.
14, just considering how many bad teams there are that they're facing
Hmm.
and how good of a coach Bill is, even if you don't fully agree. We saw what he did in 2020 with a worse roster, go 7 and
Hmm.
9 and had them in position to win a few other games. And seeing some of the teams that they're going to be facing, I don't think either of us see that. I
Hmm.
think we could see them maybe getting 6 or 7 wins, or possibly going on a run like they have in years past.
Yeah.
But we'll
So
get into that right now.
yeah, and we saw that in 2021. They ended up starting off 1-3, and then they ended up going on a run. I think they won 7 straight at one point.
Yeah, they were 1-3 and then 2-4, and then they won 7 straight.
Mhm.
And
And
that,
then we're actually controlled their own destiny for the number 1 seed, and ended up really screwing that over.
yeah,
But kind of looking at the schedule, looking ahead, I think the Bills game really changed a lot of things and changed a lot of people's opinions on what this could look like, especially just by how well they looked with proper protection.
yep,
And coming away with the win there, because a lot of people thought they were going to lose these next 2, be 1-7, and then they'd be really in deep shit. But having won that one, they're now 2-5. And realistically, with Miami coming up, we'll get into predictions, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. So if they even lose that game, they are 2-6, and realistically, all they really need to win. We said this before. They need to win one of those 2 games, the Bills or the Dolphins, to have a chance.
yep.
Because after that, you have the Commanders at home, and then you have the Germany game against the Colts, a bye week. You could be going into the realistically at
At worst, four
four
and
at four
four and
and
six.
4-6. So not the end of the world, because then you have the
Ass-
Giants.
Assuming they take care of business, which again we've
Mhm.
said we so far they haven't proven that they'd be able to, but if you're trying to think in a
A
realistic,
positive,
optimistic.
a more optimistic route. At least in 2021, you could count on these wins. So Commanders, Colts, bye week, and then you have the Giants, Chargers, which a lot of people will say, hey, the Chargers are a good team. They're a horribly coached team, and we've seen it this year. They're 2-4. And Brandon Staley's a moron. Hopefully he stays head coach for the remaining of the year and doesn't get fired halfway through. Because that's the only thing that could really jolt them. And then the Steelers.
And then the thing with the Chargers too is Herbert this year especially has not performed well in the playoffs. Since he's been drafted, he has the most fourth quarter interceptions in the entire league. And his two worst games of his career have been against Bill Belichick defenses. So even though on paper the Chargers have a better roster, Bill has a way of, at least in the two games so far, again, still small sample size, but he's had a plan to slow down that offense.
Yep. So if you go on that run there, and let's say you even lose against Miami, you'd be 8-6 heading into the Chiefs. If you win against Miami, and we'll get into that in a little bit, you could be 8-5 heading into the Chiefs. And then realistically, even if you lose the Chiefs game, you have the Broncos and Jets are winnable games, and then the Bills again. So that you could realistically be not 8-6. You'd be 7-6. I did the math wrong because 8-5 would be if you beat the Miami. If you lose to Miami, you'd be 7-6 heading to that game. So you could realistically, let's say you lose to Miami, you could lose against the Chiefs, you could lose against the Bills, and you could be 9-8. And realistically, we talked about that before. 9-8 is likely going to be a playoff team this year, based on how things are going.
And you have to also think that 3 of the Patriots' losses have been out of conference. And one of the top tiebreakers is in conference record. If it's depending on who you're tied with, it's head to head, but likely there's going to be too many ties that it's going to be conference record, which if they are 9-8, they only have 4 losses or 5 losses in the conference. It's going to be unlikely that many of the other teams are also going to have that many out of conference losses.
Yep. And that's just assuming you lose to the Chiefs, you lose to the Bills, and realistically, I would say likely you're not going to beat the Bills twice, unless they completely implode, which could happen. But the Chiefs game, we've seen them most of the season so far, except the last game, they've looked a lot less potent on offense, and that's because
the last game was again against Brandon Staley.
So they don't really have as many weapons as they had before. It's really just Travis Kelce, and then that's it. And we've seen the Patriots take care of him before because it's not that hard. You have to really just jam him at the line, and he doesn't usually fight through it. And you have someone on him, you double cover him, you jam him, and that's how you take care of him. And we don't see these teams do it. It's every single week after week after week. You should know the plan of attack against them, and no one does it. So it'll be interesting to see that game where the Patriots always play them close. They almost beat them with Brian Hoyer as a quarterback and Jarrett Stidham playing. So there is a chance for that game, and we'll get into that game much farther down the line, giving a prediction. So there is a chance. If I had to bet right now, I don't know why, but something in me, and everyone, probably not you, but a lot of people are gonna say you're crazy, you're an idiot, you're a moron, you're a homer. I still see them going on this run. I don't know if they'll go on a complete run and end up making the playoffs, but they're going to make it more competitive and more of a chance to actually make it. Where like last year, where we were going into last week saying if they win this game, they're in. So I feel like something like that may happen again.
And what also helps support that too is, again, we don't know if that's actually going to happen, but I kind of have that same feeling too, just because we have seen it, even the post Brady era, we've seen them do that. Like you said, in 2021, where they won 7 in a row and they were going great into the bye, and then something happened in the bye to just screw everything up. But that was mostly their defense that screwed them after the bye. Whereas we've seen, even with the loss that they've had on defense, we mentioned it already today, that they have so much depth, and this defense is so well constructed that if the offense can just hold their own, this team has a shot of making it to the playoffs.
Yep. All right. So, with that being said, do you have a trivia question of the week?
Trivia and slight follow-up.
Okay.
So, we sort of talked about this was one of the trivia questions during the off season, but the trivia question was who has the most receptions and receiving yards for a rookie in the Belichick era. I'm just going to expand it. Who has the most receptions and who has the most receiving yards in Patriots history as a rookie?
Oh God, receptions and receiving yards as a Patriot?
Yes, as a rookie.
As a rookie. I'm gonna go with the murderer, Aaron Hernandez.
No, that is for the Belichick era, which was both the receptions and the receiving yards, but
Okay,
not
so before
Patriots
that, Terry
history.
Glenn.
Yes. 90 catches, 1,132 yards.
He also did something inappropriate, I think.
It was
Jailed or something?
just off field stuff.
Oh.
But nothing, no like major crimes.
Okay.
But the next question is after Terry Glenn, the most receptions as a rookie is Randy Vataha with 51.
Oh.
Randy Vataha.
Okay.
So right now, Demario Douglas has, let me just pull it up. I had it. This is the follow
20
up.
something.
He has, I believe it's 14 catches for 197 yards. Will he finish the season with the second most receptions as a rookie in Patriots history?
So he's got 14 catches and how many yards?
197 yards.
197.
I don't think he's going to get second most yards is 872.
All right, he's
So
not
I'm
gonna
just
get that.
talking flat out receptions. He
And
has
50
14
what?
now. He needs 52.
52. So that's 2 minus 14. It's like 40-ish, 38.
Yeah, 38 over the
38
next 10
divided
games.
by 10. Yeah,
328 catches.
I would say he does that. Yes.
Yeah, I agree. I think my prediction is he's going to finish with about 65 catches and like 630 yards, which that would put him seventh. Sixth is 636. So he'll be in like top 10 for receiving yards, top second in receptions, assuming he doesn't get hurt.
Yep.
And
Alrighty.
that's trivia.
Okay. Now moving into Miami. We already saw them, did a preview really recently, so there's not that much to kind of really go over except for some updates that have happened. I think a really good in-depth kind of breakdown would be listening to the first Miami game that we had. But again, last game they lost 24-17. It was really the same kind of story of even the Eagles, where the offense kind of looked inept the first half or so, and then came alive in the second half and made kind of really a run and had the ball in Dolphins territory with the chance to win, chance for a first down. It was, I think, a really bad call reversing it because I don't think there was irrefutable evidence.
Based on the precedent they set earlier in the game with the Stevenson one.
Yep, based on what they said before, I don't think there was enough evidence to show that it actually was short. You called it a first down, it should remain that. And if they did convert that, who knows? They might have actually won tied the game, and who knows if they got the ball or not. If they didn't, they probably lose. But they did play them tough, and in the end, we saw them being able to handle Hill a lot in that game. Now the biggest thing was really well, first they had Marcus Jones on him because I think Jonathan Jones was hurt that game, or Jonathan Jones went out in that game.
Was out. He was a last minute scratch.
Yeah. So then Marcus Jones initially was covering him. Marcus Jones got hurt, and then Christian Gonzalez was covering him and really held him down as well. So both of them really did a good job. It's a damn shame that Marcus Jones is going to be out for the year. That's another update I don't think we mentioned yet, but Troy Brown did mention that this week. So then Christian Gonzalez was covering him. He's also done for the year. So likely we're probably going to see Jonathan Jones again on him if Tyreek Hill plays. So there was an update that came from what player was it, Eric? Tua, saying that when he comes back, that the way that he ended up quoting it, and I'll pull up the different quote there to kind of show what he said, but he did make it sound like there is a chance that Hill might not play this game, which would be and he didn't practice the first
he didn't practice on Wednesday. The first
so he ended up saying Where do I have this? Do. Booty, rocking everywhere.
He
Booty.
said somewhere down the line we're gonna get Tyreek back.
Yes. So somewhere down the line does not sound like it's going to happen tomorrow or Sunday. So if that is the case, and then Waddle is hurt, and he did have limited participation in practice. He ended up going out in the last game. So either he's going to play, not be 100%, or there's a chance that he might not even play either. So those are two big real injuries for him. It's their top two playmakers they have. So that could really change things up. But if somehow Hill is able to play, I would expect Jonathan Jones on him. If Waddle is able to play, I would think that would be J.C. Jackson on him for that. And then another just update, not really a huge one for them, not really make a break, but Isaiah Wynn heading to the IR. Like usual, I think 5 of the 6 seasons he's hit the IR at some point. So not really too surprising for him. Anything
the
you
Dolphins still are banged up on top of that too,
Hmm.
where their safety Javon Hollins in concussion protocol. Raheem Mostert didn't practice on Wednesday with an ankle. Supposedly he hasn't been practicing the first on the Wednesday practices, so I don't know how concerning it really is. Their other running back, Devon Achane, who's the rookie who's been sensational this year, he's on the IR, so he's going to be out. And then Xavier Howard was a limited participation with a groin injury. Jalen Ramsey is still on IR. He is in the practice protocol, so or he has come back to practice, so he might be elevated this game, but they could possibly be without some of their top cornerbacks. So they are banged up. If they do have them, they still might not be 100%. But if you're the Patriots and a Patriots fan, you can't really ask for more. Even if some of these players do come back, they're not going to be at 100%. Then you're going to have to take advantage of the situation ahead.
Yep, 100%. I think that this kind of injury situation and really building off of what they did in the Bills game, I think could actually put them in a good position to actually win this game. And I think another thing too is just really, it's not a really good reason, but just lower averages. They haven't beaten Tua yet. Eventually, they have to beat them, so it's going to happen at some point. So maybe it might be this game. So we will have to see on that. Anything else you wanted to really discuss about the defense, offense? Any way they should attack him? Any way that we should be expecting?
Yeah, I think the big thing is the Dolphins, even though historically over the past few years have played the Patriots well, even on defense, they are ranked 27th in the NFL in DVOA. And this should be a game where, especially considering how the Patriots did last week against Buffalo, you are facing an inferior defense that is banged up. Patriots should be able to build upon it. I'd expect them to once again start with the ground game, start with the run, mix in some play action, go with the short passing game, mix in a lot of motion. And then one thing that a lot of people forget is a big difference between the week 2 game versus this week is the Patriots offensive line. Week 2, their starting offensive line was low at left tackle. Strange, his first game in 9 months. David Andrews, Michael Wenyu, and then he was subbed out for Mafi, and then Calvin Anderson at right tackle. Whereas this game, you have Trent Brown back. Most likely, he was limited in practice today. But then you have Cole Strange, who looked really well last week. You have David Andrews back, which the game against Miami, he wasn't great. You have City So at right guard, most likely, where he looked excellent last week. If he's able to keep it up, that's another story. And then you have Michael Wenyu at right tackle. So this offensive line should be a much better position to help the offense succeed than it was in week 2.
Yep, 100% agree. I think it all starts with the offensive line. It's the most boring subject of them all, but it all, like we say every single year, it all starts with the offensive line. And I think that's the big key to the game, establishing the run, getting pass protection for Mac, and then having him be comfortable in the pocket. So I think those are the big kind of keys to the game. Next, predictions. Miami is favored, and this might change later in the week depending on Hill status, Waddle status, and the corner statuses. But Miami right now is favored by 9.5 points. Over under is 47. I think that's the highest over under for the Patriots this year. So we'll start predictions. I'll go first. I actually have them. If you asked me 2 weeks ago, what I thought, I would have said maybe a loss depending on how they looked against Buffalo. I'm changing my whole tune. I think they're going to beat Miami. I think they're going to go on a big run. They may not win like 7 or 8 in a row, but they may win 75% of the next few games. So, I've got them winning 31-20. I think this will be the first time they score over 30 points. They have not done that yet this year. I think it's going to happen eventually. I'd like it to happen against a relatively real team. So I got them winning 31-20. So they've got they limit the Dolphins to 2 touchdowns, 2 field goals.
I'm actually very close to that. I have the Patriots winning 27-23, where Patriots get 3 touchdowns, 2 field goals, Dolphins get 2 touchdowns, 3 field goals, and Patriots come out with a win.
All right. So hopefully that happens, and hopefully when we talk to you guys next week, there'll be a Patriots win. There'll be a lot more happy people out there. It'll be 3-5, and then I don't know, maybe some of these Fire Bill people will want to like I don't know, leave the team or something like that, or come back to the good side. I really don't want them back, but we'll see what happens. So we'll hopefully look forward to a Patriots win and talk to you guys next week.